Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. Took a little bit of a break from making some videos for the last week, mostly for the holidays. Had quite a few evening plans, and also just taking a couple days off to, re-energize before the new year kicks in. And overall, it's been pretty good. We're still on track for quite a few other things. We have still been making some progress on the remaining Versus videos. I've at least been doing some script writing throughout the week, and still not sure about those Dauntless videos. But I've also started playing Final Fantasy VII New Threat. It was a mod that I've been meaning to play since its 1.1 or 1.2 iteration. A lot of gameplay balances, some story changes, some clearer dialogue, a lot of optional stuff. I've been playing through that on stream. So that's been largely what's been on my mind for the last week, and I probably won't upload a playthrough of it, but something to educate people on what it is and how it changes up Final Fantasy VII, maybe get a few more people interested in it, and gameplay changing mods like it, because I actually think there are quite a few of them across the various Final Fantasy games that are quite interesting. Also a few randomizers, but Final Fantasy for me is not much of a randomizer game personally. But before we move on, let us thank our patrons on the list. I had a new patron send me an email, and the message they sent me almost got lost, even though I saw the initial pledging on Patreon. For those of you who don't know, we have patrons who help support the YouTube channel, especially because YouTube, sometimes it just sucks. Sometimes it's alright, sometimes it sucks. So it's literally just there as additional support for the YouTube channel, and nothing too fancy after that. But, yeah, let's see. Let me drag it over here so I'm at least talking into the microphone. Yes, we have Kimai. I almost said Kamal. Kimai Yukiyu from Shiva. I'm sure I pronounced that terribly, but they'll be in the list that's scrolling. That's probably already scrolled through at this point. And, of course, our Patrons of Darkness, Khuja from Jenova, and Kurenai Oni, who have also been massive supporters. Thank you to them. Thank you to our other patrons. Of course, thank you to everyone who tunes in every week, whether you like, favorite, subscribe, share, or comment below. Whatever may be your poison. But anyway, I took a look through this. I don't think this will be that long of a Mondays with Mr. Happy. Kind of works for me because I have company coming over soon. So let's get started. Question number 1. Hello, Mr. Happy. Happy belated birthday. May this year be twice as good as last year and half as good as the next. Now, let's just make all these, just chill. I just like to chill year after year. I'm all right with that, but thank you. The more I learn about Garlemald and their use of technology, the more similarities I see with Zanarkand before Sin was destroyed. Really hope we get to visit the next expansion. Zanarkand famously had the Zanarkand Abe, so I guess my question is, what are you going to name your Blitzball team? I was warned specifically about this comment. Somebody came into my Twitch stream and said, I asked a question that I'm sure you're going to love regarding your favorite minigame in the Final Fantasy franchise. Little did I know it would be the actual first question. So, I hate you. And as for the technology and the similarities, really draw more of a similarity to Magitech and to, Final Fantasy VI, especially because of the namesake. So, for me, I don't really draw that same parallel to not even just Zanarkand, but I guess to any of the technology that's present in Final Fantasy X. It really, for me, always draws more towards Final Fantasy VI. Number 2, hey Happy, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays, obligatory long-time watcher, first-time questioner. Oh, well, welcome and thank you for asking a question this week. Oh my word, that's a lot of text. My question/discussion topic is about gear progression. Watching people play WoW Classic and Gear Up has kind of made me wish 14 would freshen up their gear progression system with more options and side grades. Feels like current weekly tome, so I get this question quite frequently. And there are pros and cons to all sorts of different forms of progression, whether you go directly vertical or you create lots of individual side grades. A lot of what I say is the most ideal, and nobody ever seems to talk about, is diagonal progression, where your item level does go up, but there are things on the side that you can use as micro upgrades as you climb the vertical ladder. And that's something that WoW Classic does, but ultimately what it boils down to is no matter how you look at it, there's a best piece. There is. Mathematically speaking, it is always going to be the fact when it comes to online games. There will always be a mathematical superior choice, whether it be in skills or in gear. And when it comes to that sort of progression and the rate at which you actually do progress in an MMO in the modern day, like Final Fantasy XIV, a game that specifically doesn't try to force you to play longer than you really need to. It's a big aspect of Final Fantasy XIV that's become more and more prevalent over the years. You run into a situation where doing these vertical progression systems just doesn't end up being something that fits into the game's progression overall, because that goes against kind of their core concepts for the game. So you probably won't ever see anything like this in Final Fantasy XIV, because it's not trying to be the game. It already has that sort of micro step, but it just does it directly with the item level. Your own casual player will get to max level. They'll see tomestones as an option. They'll see the 24-mans. They'll see the EX primals. They'll see the normal mode raids. They'll see the savage mode raids. And people will kind of climb that ladder as they would in a diagonal session. They'll just climb it directly up. And so there probably doesn't behoove them much, outside of providing a better reward structure to expand on content, to create these little side grades. I think we're more likely to see things like Blue Mage and Eureka, where they create individual progressions that are completely separate from our main progression, but we have to progress to a certain point before we can partake in that. And it's something I really wish they'd dive into more with Blue Mage in particular, because I think they could go nuts when it comes to Blue Mage and not really have to worry about whether or not it's balanced. It's those kind of things just aren't meant to be balanced, and I think that's where they need to explore options like which you've described, or what, because I have actually been reading it as I've been answering. I think that would be the best places for them to explore the kind of options that you're suggesting here. But in the main content structure, I don't think it's going to work, and I don't think it'll ever be their goal. Not that it can't work, because it has worked, but I don't think it'll work specifically for the way Final Fantasy XIV is built. Next one, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays, a long-time listener, first-time caller. Commenter? I don't have a phone line yet. How you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? Recommend a coffee for a loser who has never liked coffee. He is me. I'm that loser. So I'm not going to recommend you a specific coffee. Hardcore coffee fans might recommend something like Death Wish coffee. Obviously, I have my own coffee partnership. I haven't changed the coffee for it in a while, because I'm actually a big fan of the coffee that is currently selected there. But I would highly advise, if you're not a fan of coffee, gravitate towards lighter or medium roast. A darker roast is a very bold flavor, but it's not something that's very friendly to someone who's new to coffee. Lighter roasts can be a bit rough. I'd say a medium roast, something like a French roast, is probably your best bet if you're going to drink a coffee black. If you're going to drink your coffee with sugar or milk, you may want to try something like cold brew, which brings about sweeter notes for people who are willing to use additives like cream and sugar. And that can be a very easy way to get into it, especially because it's a colder drink, and some people just don't gravitate towards hot drinks quite the same. Like this. Hashtag next one. I deliberately avoided saying it for the first few questions. I'm currently in a static. Hello to you too. Nothing hardcore or anything, really casual, but my question is pots. A raid leader always tells us to use a pot prior to pulling in a raid, and tells us to use it mid-raid battle to use another one, etc. My question is, what are these pots? What do they help you with when you consume one? I'm a healer if that matters for any sort of way, but yeah. So pots are in specific, the case that's being referenced here, those are what we call stat pots, and they're basically consumables that directly reward you with your main stat that you use for damage for 30 seconds. Now the older ones actually only lasted 15 seconds, but in the more recent expansions we've had infusions, and I think this expansions are called tinctures. I'm so used to calling them pots, I kind of just forget myself. And they're just 30-second boosts to your main stats. So you buy one, so like if you were a bard, for example, you'd buy ones that boost your dexterity. If you were a melee, I guess more so a monk or a samurai, you would buy something like a strength potion or a strength tincture, tier 1, tier 2. There's the most recent one that's currently available. And they're massive damage outlier boosts. So when you calculate DPS without even going into the individual calculations, potions create what we call outliers, in that they are massive increases at very set specific times that you can repeat throughout the fight, and they help bring your overall DPS up over the course of an entire encounter. So it's something that, assuming you're not dirt poor, something that yes, you should be bringing into raids, and especially when you're trying to specifically defeat the bosses, once you've already nailed the strategies down, these are essential for getting that first clear, because most people lose some DPS to nerves and get it back with potions. Now that being said, it's weird your raid leader tells you to pop them prior to pulling. I'm assuming he's just reminding you to use them and not actually telling you to pop it before the pull. Because some jobs do that, like healers do that, but not every job does that. Some jobs have like one GCD they'll do before they pop a potion. I know as a dancer, for example, I'll lead with standard step, I'll prep it before the pull, lead with the hit, and then I'll potion and then technical step. That would be already after the enemy is engaged, but it's usually within the first 1 or 2 global cooldowns that you'll usually activate one of these stat pots. I'd highly advise taking a look at the Balance Discord. They have recommendations on rotations for all the various jobs, and pot timings are going to be very important there. There is also, of course, individual fight knowledge and when to use stat potions, because sometimes it just doesn't make sense to do it because the boss will jump, or there's going to be an intermission, or something along those lines that'll cause you to lose uptime on it. So a little bit of it comes with feeling out the fight. Most of it comes with just understanding a basic place and where it belongs in your rotation. I don't even know what question number this. I was going to say, I'll just say 5th question, 6th question, because I've done that before. I've already lost track. I think this is question number 5. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hello. Hello. Do you think Square Enix will ever offer a Spanish language option for the game? You know, I've had this discussion and I was kind of surprised they don't. Obviously, they have a lot more information than we do as consumers, but that seems like a language option that probably should be covered, right? It could also just be there aren't... I shouldn't say there aren't people who can do this, because they 100% exist, as has been proven by many games that exist. They might just not have the staff specifically for this, like opening up a Spanish localization and actually getting them caught up with everything in the game, the amount of work that would go into that. It might just be at this point that there's so much text that it'd be this infinite backlog that they could never have prepped for the most recent patch. And so adding another language is probably the super difficult task. But it still surprises me, you know? Spanish is practically spoken more than English. I think it is spoken more than English in North America at this point, probably. And it's not one of the language options. Plus, there's plenty of people who play in a lot of the Central and South American countries, and while those regions aren't natively supported, they still do play the game. So they have to know that, right? Like, it's just got to be this massive undertaking, and that has to be... I have to imagine that's why it hasn't happened. On to the next one. See, on to the next one is also a decent variation of next one. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hello, Haps. Hope you're having a great day and had a splendid holiday. I did, and I hope the same for you and everyone watching as well. First time askers who have a bonus of the most tender tomahawk steak ever made. Went to my first FanFest 2018. Remember they announced in the previous December. I was wondering when you think they'd be announcing this upcoming one. Seems like you haven't been paying attention to the live letters then, and you should, because there's always information about those kind of things in those. The last live letter, they already told us that they are planning stuff for the North American, Japanese, and European fan festivals, as they do every couple of years. The only detail we don't have any dates, we don't have any locations, we know where North America won't be having their fan fest, and that is Las Vegas. For the first time, they have confirmed it will not be in Las Vegas. If I had to wager a guess, it would probably be Anaheim. The Anaheim Convention Center seems to fit an adequate number of people. I've been there before, and it definitely fits a large enough number of people for what I'd imagine would be considered acceptable. It's only, an hour to an hour or two outside of LA, where the North American offices are located. And while they could be in LA, I don't think they will be. I don't think they'll do it in LA proper, because the LA Convention Center... no thanks. So that's all we know. It won't be in Vegas. I'm putting my money on it being at the Anaheim Convention Center. You know what? I should have just started keeping track from question number 5. This question. Yeah, that's different. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hashtag quick question, if you say so. Hey, Happy. Hope your holiday was spectacular, and I hope the same for you as well. You've expressed interest in having the 4 Fiends as trial bosses, but I'm curious which set you would rather have. The Fiends from 1 or 4? 100% the Fiends from 4. The Fiends from 1 are kind of these generic fantasy enemies. Like, they're just common, like a lich and a dragon, and it's like, yeah, there's some novelty to that, especially in Final Fantasy 1 itself. Those battles are not insignificant, and even though they are very generic styles of fantasy enemies, they are still memorable in their own right. But there's a personality and almost a political feel to the Final Fantasy IV Fiends, where, some of them infiltrate society, some of them come after us directly, and some of them are just gentlemen in the form of Rubicante. So between the personality and the impression made, I'd so much rather have the Final Fantasy IV set of the 4 Fiends than the Final Fantasy 1 set. Damn, this is one of the first questions I was asked when this video was posted. Hello, Mr. Happy. Here is a question for you. With the recent Witcher show airing on Netflix and with a relative success, by the way, Henry Cavill killed that role in a good way, does this make you have some positive hopes for the live-action Final Fantasy XIV TV show that was announced this year? Every time gaming media is brought into a TV show, a Netflix special, a movie, whatever it is that isn't a video game media, I literally hold zero hopes for it every time. It doesn't. I don't care how attached I am to the franchise. I don't care if it makes a really good first impression. 0 is the benchmark. And you know what? Sometimes they still don't even reach that. I see the original Sonic trailer, although the new one definitely raised my expectations for the movie, even if I still don't think it's going to be very good. So no, it's not that I don't have hope for it. It's that I don't like to have a good expectation, I suppose is the best way to put it. Another question from 6 days ago. Hey Haps, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hello. Weird that you did it that way, but I'm cool with it. I'm doing alright, and I hope you're doing alright too. I'm doing alright, and you're doing alright, so we're doing alright. A while back, I stumbled upon a Twinfinite interview in which Yoshi P mentions the dev team has made some progress in the way of breaking down barriers that would enable cross-data center play. Yes, we've definitely brought this up a few times as it is a very, very important statement to have made. One that, unfortunately, raises our hopes for it to happen sooner rather than later, but they also said that despite having discovered the way, it is still going to be an immensely difficult task to overcome. How do you think it will affect the game, especially if it ends up having a visitation function similar to the one we have now? Things like established economics between data center, server congestion, connection, and delay issues that may occur in instance content when playing with someone on the EU or JP data centers. Excuse me, how regulated should something like this be? I think the biggest thing is that unlike when we go between servers in our own data center, I think a data center swap needs to be something more significant that undergoes a more scrutinous, I guess, adjustment period. So when we go between servers, it's not really that big a deal. You know, yeah, the market board changes, whatnot, but they're all things that they don't necessarily have to adjust for the individual player. It's still within the same data center. It's still, you know, kind of reacting to the same connections. They don't have to adjust for latency, location, anything like that. When it comes to a data center change, I don't care if it takes an extra 5 minutes or so. I feel like there needs to be some deeper player commitment to making the choice to play on a different data center for a period of time, whether that be a time where they have to log out of the game and the information has to be properly sent over, or something along those lines. But it needs to properly signify to the player and properly handle the player having those changes in things like latency and location. When I go to a JP data center, if it takes me 2 seconds to swap and suddenly I have like a 200-300 latency, 200 ping latency, MS latency, something's gonna fall apart, I feel. So when they do finally break this down, when it finally works, whenever that may be, just make it clearly communicated and take your damn time with the character data transfer and make sure everything that's going to be different when you get there is made very, very clear to the person who's going to be playing there. I wonder how VPNs will handle that adjustment, if you need to log out and change your VPN so it can properly track your location versus where you're trying to connect to versus what the best route is. I'm sure there's going to be something that falls apart on that regard that takes some player adjustment as well, but I just hope they can get it working and that it works properly. The server visiting actually went better than I expected, so I've got high hopes for this, but I don't expect it to come anytime in the next, even in the next couple years, even by the next expansion. I'm not holding an expectation that this will be there. And next one, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey Happy, how you doing? I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. My question is to expand a bit more on the Faust-like bosses. Yes, I think I answered a question like that last week. What do you think about having it be a separate instance trial that you have to finish for the initial quest to unlock the raid tier? Something like, we need to get into Alexander, but first defeat the door's guard. Maybe even add it to the expert roulette or even the trial roulette. Yeah, I think that's a problem. So the thing is, when we talk about the importance of Faust-like bosses, normal mode raids are not the place where we look at those kind of bosses and go, we need those. It's the savage raids. So you can't just put it in something like an expert roulette or a trial roulette. It doesn't match the demographic of those types of roulettes that are being done. You need to very clearly know you're going in to complete this challenge in order to see if you qualify. And that's where the reason why you clearly wanted to put it in the roulettes, and the reason why that's a bit of a problem, is because as soon as anyone's qualified, no one wants to do it anymore. And that's why we don't have things like that. The making a barrier to enter the raid that's like that is actually more difficult and more not as strict a check. Again, we talked about it last week where you can't just make Stone Sky Sea a requirement because tanks and healers, it literally has no bearing on how they're actually going to perform an encounter. Their tank swaps, their heal checks, their tank cooldowns. It's not enough of bearing. It only works for the DPS portion, which is, again, something that's not moving or attacking, kind of pathetic. I'm still of the opinion we need, if they are going to do a check like that, a dummy check that still makes you do those things. You know, they just provide AI like trusts that's very particularly designed to perform a fight like it is a dance and to see if you're capable of the most basic of things. Again, like an intermediate, like a Hall of the Intermediate. That you're more likely to see that than you are to see a Faust-like boss that locks away the raid tier like the way you've described, or even like the original Alexander Savage Faust like we had back in the day. You're more likely to see something like what I've just described develop in the future. Alright, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, yo, happy Christmas and New Year. Happy New Year and Christmas to you as well. See, I said it backwards. Found your channel while looking for Final Fantasy lore and found your bestiary videos. You have any plans for another one? So I'm always thinking of doing a bestiary video. It's a question of what I want to make them on. There is, unfortunately, a finite number of creatures that can be described via the system of YouTube. And then there's the question, do I go back and update the old ones? Now, a part of me says, yeah, most of the work's already done. You can actually improve on some of them. And then I remember that... am I adding anything important enough to repost an entire video? Someone goes, I've already watched this. Oh, he added an 18-second spot at the end where he goes, oh, now Titan's part of Eden, and he's there and he's a car, and like, it's like, so let me just... The answer to this question is never no, because I'm always thinking about it. Can I do a bestiary in this, that? Should I do it on like a weapon type, like popular weapons like the Masamune, or should I do it on the... Should I just actually start taking individual characters and brushing up on their backstory? And you know what? I like that idea, but it hasn't ever come to fruition yet. So let's just say maybe. Maybe. And next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. With a capital S. Hello, Michael. A couple of simple questions. Hopefully. First, why did you choose Monday to be the day for your Q&A? I know Mr. Happy Tuesdays wouldn't be as catchy, but at least not anymore after all these years. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. So thinking back, I actually don't know why I picked Mondays. I actually just straight up think I liked recording on Sundays and posting on Mondays, but the alliteration of Mr. Happy Mondays definitely had to have played a role. Now that you've said that to me, I have to think that's how I thought of it at the time, not just, oh, I like recording on Sundays, why not? Second, have you ever been anxious when starting the Q&A? The questions have the right or satisfactory answer in mind. I'm never so worried about not having the right answers, because a lot of the questions I get, there are no right answers. It's, what do you think I should do, or could this happen? There's not really a right or wrong, and if there is, if it's something like, what is my rotation, which is something I can't really answer here in a concise and effective way, I'll usually reference an external source. Even if I don't include a comment for it, at least provide you enough that a Google search would get you to the needed results. So no, I'm never worried about that. I don't think I have to be, because this isn't like a holy Bible of Final Fantasy. It's just a dude talking into his camera and hopefully helping some people out when they have some questions. But don't worry about your bad English, and I wish you a happy holiday as well. Oh, this one was edited. I wonder why, because it doesn't have an edit in it, so I'm assuming it was just a random misspelling. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, how are you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. First time question, long time listener. With the post-expansion quests such as 3.1 and 4.1 and so on, when you do a quest, you get little or no EXP for doing them, and same goes for dungeons when you get a total of a choke EXP for doing them. My question is, do you think for newcomers that it would be beneficial for them to buff the experience gained from the quests of the post-expansion dungeon so it would help speed along those just joining in? A while back when I ran a gauntlet on an alt, sorry, my nose itches, I found myself gated at points even on a preferred server with bonus EXP. Okay, if you're gated on a preferred world, something went horribly wrong. I have seen people be over level 60 before getting through even like halfway through the Heavensward quests. So if you're on a preferred world and you have fallen behind on experience, something has actually gone horribly wrong, because what you've just described is mathematically, I want to say impossible, but I'm sure someone could prove me wrong, in order to achieve. Now, for the non-preferred worlds, it's an interesting point, but the idea behind the EXP curve is that you're encouraged to participate in other content, not just grab the quest and flush your way forward. Go back and do a roulette, go unlock some bonus dungeons. You know, what are some of these side quests you could unlock? What are some of these side quests even for? They're there for a particular reason. It's made that way so that you don't ever have to go away from it for too long, but you're at least somewhat encouraged to do it outside of the preferred worlds. I will say, however, that at this point, for anything 2 expansions before, like Heavensward and before, I'd say that they should just buff that. I'd say there is a point where you look back and you go, okay, like, come on. Buff that. I wouldn't be surprised if they did this, what you've suggested at some point. I think more and more they're trying not to feel like people need to be forced to play the game for 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. Like they take forever to catch up to their friends. They're doing it more and more. So I think something along the lines of what you suggested is probably coming in the future. But I don't think they need to do it. I think it's just a matter of better communicating to the player ways and alternatives that they can use in a more benefit. It's better at communicating it. Better than I'm communicating the point that I'm trying to communicate right now, at the very least. Alright, next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays, long-time viewer, first-time asker, welcome. Hey, Haps, happy holidays. How you doing? I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. As I'm leveling up my Trust Gang, a certain thought occurred to me. Do you think the Scion's Trust characters will be protected by plot armor, or do you think that Square Enix will pull an Aerith on us and eventually have one of them die? It'd be a shame to lose a party member that we spent so many hours leveling up. So important thing about trusts, and this is made apparent in the Trusted Friend achievement that you can get for leveling all of the current ones to 80, is that those are not the actual characters, the Scions, the trust that you're actually leveling from 71 to 80. They are avatars of those initial players. So they are just copies of them. So outside of the main scenario completions, which go away once you've actually completed the main scenario, no, I don't see a reason why they should be protected by plot armor. They only need to be protected for the points at which you actually need to be using them, because they will eventually go away. And as long as the base story option goes away before the trust is actually executed, or the character that the trust represents is executed, then I don't see why they should be protected by plot armor. A lot of people do think they will be, and that's just a matter of perspective, but I'd like to believe any of those characters could be on the chopping block at some point, because it's no fun otherwise if I don't think they could actually die. If I think they'll just live the whole time. The only character I think will never die is Y'shtola. The only one I think they'll never kill. Alright, this one looks quick. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, how you doing? I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. This one actually is a reply, so I almost didn't take it. Because most of the time, if someone's replied, it's usually covered something that I probably would have said. But what do you think of those? What do you think those 5.2 red mage buffs could be? Honestly, I just think damage. That's it. Outright damage. Nothing else. I mean, they could make systematic gameplay changes. You know, they could even just give them a slight rework on a skill or two, but I think it'll just be damage. That's it. I think we're getting towards the last few questions here. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello and hope Christmas went well. Same for you, my friend. Curious how to transition from a melee DPS to a melee DPS from a ranged. I played both tank and ranged in various tiers, but I'd like to transition to trying out melee. I tend to have a fair bit of difficulty with landing positionals or maintaining uptime. So unfortunately, I don't really need to read the rest of the question to know the answer. There's no shortcut for getting better at something. You practice at it, and eventually you're better at it. Melee's no different. The Final Fantasy XIV is no different as an entirety. You know, the thing you're having trouble with, what do you do when you're having trouble with something? You practice it. And eventually, you overcome that challenge, and you're fine. Final Fantasy XIV has the benefit of not being a largely dynamic game when it comes to the gameplay and the boss fights. So, learning an individual fight or learning an individual job is something that, while of course, you know, a proc here and then it's a little bit different on this fight, but once you understand the core of it and what you're supposed to do, it's just about building muscle memory. That's all it's about. So as long as you do that, you shouldn't have any issues. Just get in there, practice. Even if you're just hitting a dummy, just go up to a dummy, hit it for a couple hours, do it until you're not forgetting your positionals, till doing your positionals is second nature, and you'll be fine. Don't think about it so much. It's easy. Just go practice. Oh, we got quite a few hashtags. Oh my goodness. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hashtag one question. Hashtag Merry Christmas, comma, which ruins the rest of it. Happy birthday and happy early new year. Right back at you. Well, minus the birthday. Maybe the birthday. I don't know. Hey, Haps. Hope you had a good Crimbo and birthday. I did indeed. One question for you this week. What video game, whether it be mentally or physically, has challenged you the most? I mean, Dance Dance Revolution. 100% Dance Dance Revolution in the groove. Ring Fit. I think of physical challenges in video games as additionally mental challenges in video games, because it's really, really easy for me to sit in front of a computer, play a game, and even if it's brutally difficult, just keep practicing and practicing and practicing. Even if it's just making my head want to explode from how frustrated I am. When something is physically exhausting, there's a mental game that I find that I play with myself, and I'm sure other people experience this too, where I need to be the one to reassure myself that I can keep going physically, and also needs to make sure that I can properly assess, you know, when I've reached my limit. And then when I want to push myself further, while yes, you could argue that's a physical challenge, you have to be able to mentally get yourself to the point where you can continue something that's so grueling. I played DDR, I competed with DDR, or in DDR for, 7 years of my life, very consistently, back when I was younger. And while I don't do that anymore, I think of how many times I'd do a custom step chart in Stepmania with my metal DDR pad, and it'd be 4, 5, 6 minutes long, and by the third minute, I'm just like, I don't know if I can do this, but I'd just push myself forward and make sure that I could actually get it done. So I have to say the ones that are physically challenging also end up being the most mentally challenging. So DDR in the Groove, Ring Fit, things like that, definitely at the top of that list. All right, next one. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. What's going on, my dude? How you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. Long-time viewer, frequent asker, and a bonus of thank you for giving me and all of us content to look forward to week after week with the Mondays and State of the Realms. Well, when we have State of the Realms on the week, there will be one this week, by the way. You really help make Mondays easier at work with giving me something enjoyable to listen to while I enjoy my morning coffee. Oh, I need more coffee. Cheers. Cheers to you, too. So my question here is, if you could pick just one weapon and give it a job, what would be brought into the game, what would it be, and what would you name the job? You've given me 4 choices: a battle staff, a two-handed hammer, a whip, a flail, or a weapon of your choice not listed. Listen, there's only one job that I want to see one day, and it's probably going to be a limited job, but that's, of course, going to be my puppet master. Now, a lot of people would then think to Final Fantasy XI, oh, they use hand-to-hand weapons and the puppet was an extension. No. See, in my brain, for all of its not glory, I'd like to imagine that the automaton is the weapon. So when you command it to do something, it's not a pet. It's just your weapon of choice. It's an extension of you. Everything it does is what you tell it to do. And I don't mean that you literally are like a marionette like this, but that you have a device that issues commands, much like in Final Fantasy XI, and that is your primary weapon, the animator. You don't actually swing it. You don't defend with it. It just tells your puppet everything that it needs to do, but the puppet is not a pet. That is my imagination of Puppet Master in Final Fantasy XIV, and that is my weapon of choice, the animator. Oh, it actually turns out, as I'm scrolling through, that was the last question I'm going to answer. I think there's one in here that was technically a question that I'm just like, I don't really have an answer for that, or I'm not going to do that on the show, but that would be the last one for this episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. So thank you everyone who asked a question for this week. Next time we talk, it'll be next year. So I will see you next year. Be sure to ask your questions for the first episode of 2020 in the comment section of the video below. And again, thank you to our patrons of darkness, and everyone who tunes in every week for Mondays with Mr. Happy. Anyway, with that, I'm going to head out. I will see all of you in the next video. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. Don't forget. And I'll see you next time. Until then, take care.